Good morning, Quasar Markets Live. You've got your main man, Howard Greenberg, your host of Quasar Markets Live, here to do our morning update. I am here solo again this morning. My main man, Steve Big Beat, or our founder and CEO, is up in New York. He was at the UN delegate up there speaking. He also was on the floor of the stock exchange doing an interview with Schwab and speaking at an AI conference at Fordham. So busy week for the big man. Busy week today, or busy day today, when it comes to economic data. So, that's sort of the thing that I am keeping an eye on this morning, or that we've already seen. Market is nicely green this morning so far, and the first economic sets of economic data did nothing to dissuade that. So great to see that coming out. And what we saw was good initial jobless claims, durable orders, GDP 3%. So we will go through some of these different pieces here this morning. But overall, we are looking like we are set up to have a really nice green day here. So I will warn, there are Fed speakers all day. This has a couple of them on there. But overall, as you can see, we have Adriana Kugler and Susan Collins speaking at 9:10. Michelle Bowman again at 9:15. We got our boy Jay Powell at 9:20. John Williams, the New York Fed president, at 9:25. Michael Barr at 10:30. Lisa Cook at 10:30. And last but not least, we see that our boy, the eyebrow himself, Neil Kashkari, will be with Fed Vice Chair for Supervision, Michael Barr, at 1 o'clock. So a full day of Fed speak today. We do know that can lead to some volatility here. So far, though, we have been looking at pretty much a nice move up in general. If we take a look at the hourly here on QQQ, the NASDAQ, you can see we gapped up from about 487 to 491 this morning, and have risen to right about 493.81, really right about the highs of the morning. So looking really good so far. I saw a couple articles today that I'm going to start to get, we're going to talk about the fear and greed factor, first of all, because I see that being discussed a little bit, moving into maybe the greed factor, so to keep an eye on it. But S&P, so let's go to the S&P here, is on track, and as you can see, it set an all-time high again. I guess it didn't yesterday, but it has set an all-time high again this morning in the pre-market hours, on pace to finish up more than 20% in consecutive years. So we don't see that a lot, but it does, we are seeing just a lot of positive talk today, about a rally. So in the news, I would say too, what we've seen is China again in the news, and not just China, but world markets in general coming more into play today. We had spoken about China, had some announcements, yesterday, and cut their rates, right? And it didn't move. Well, 2 days ago, they cut rates. That moved the needle overnight. We saw pre-market. It led us into a nice day on Monday, or Tuesday, excuse me. And then we saw, following that, though, yesterday they came out and they had lessened some requirements for banks and basically tried to inject some money into the financial system. It moved the markets there, but it had not really moved the markets here in the U.S. yesterday. As we know, it ended up being a down day, with the SPY down about 1/4 point. QQQ did finish up positive, but also the small caps, they finished down lower too. So, a down day, but then China back at it again. They sort of doubled down or tripled down on, financial easing there, or supports to the system. And what we saw today a little bit more of is that, first we know it was a central bank that pledged to shore up the country's economy a little bit, and the property sector especially. is where they are, really propping it up, and you'll see that the Hang Seng, which is Hong Kong's index, jumped about 4.2%, notching its highest close since August of 2023. The CSI 300, which is an index of large stocks that are listed in Shanghai or Shenzhen, rose by about the same amount. And like I said, today's news was that they are going to put some more money back into, or prop up a little bit, the beleaguered real estate market. And what we saw is property shares surged with Vanke and Longfor's Hong Kong listed stocks gaining more than 20%. And in mainland China, where they have a 10% up limit that applies to any stock moves, many of the property companies hit that ceiling. What we've also seen is the Chinese yuan is moved up again. It's trading slightly above the 7 yuan per dollar. As we know, that is a psychological, we spoke about that a little bit yesterday. It's a really big psychological area, so they did do that. So based upon that, and then they announced, or Bloomberg announced, that China is also considering about $142 billion capital injection into state banks. So markets moving up on that news. Like I said, if we open where we are now, 575, well ahead, an all-time high on the SPY. And NASDAQ, it could try to make a run here. 494, all-time high, 503.85. Let's get this to the daily chart here. Take a look at that a little bit. You can see that back here in mid-July, we hit that all-time high. But, we've broken through the price channel resistance that we sort of had on it. If I put in my support and resistance, you don't see much above it right here. So I do think, we could see it. We could see an explosion here, but we get a little bit of, impotence today. If we continue with the good news, if Fed speak doesn't spook everybody away. Don't be surprised at open here, though. Usually we see pre-market up this well, and you can see the tick up significantly here. Tick you want to look at on a lower basis here, but up, in the positives. We know yesterday, most of the day, the tick was negative, leading to that downside that we saw. But it is good to see us moving in the right direction here this morning. Gold is up again. It did set another all-time high here today. So gold continuing to move up. Silver, it's sort of paused around that 33 level. It hasn't been able to get back above it here, 32. Bitcoin at 64.5 here. So we are seeing a nice move up by Bitcoin here. We're getting close to that level I spoke of yesterday on the crypto corner. 65, like 092 is really the area that I'm looking at. You break 65, 100 on Bitcoin, we could see a nice move up. So market's looking pretty good. Should be a fun day for people. We definitely see more fun when the markets are moving up. I will point out we have a great schedule for you on Quasar Markets Live today. We have from Bullish Beers, Jeremy Vreeland and Matthew Tuttle from Tuttle Capital coming in at 11:30 to do their watch list. They have been on fire. I'll be looking up for their updates on Snap, Nvidia, and a bunch of others. They were looking at Micron was one that they were looking at that's jumped up. So we have that. And then, like we do every day, we have the man himself, Scott Bauer, CEO of Prosper Trading Academy and 35-year veteran of trading on the floor of the CBOE. Will be doing his report live from the CBOE today, so we look forward to that at 1 o'clock. So great day of stuff coming up for you. Oil is the one thing that has been dropping here. We see that WTI has dropped back below that 70 handle that we talk about as being an important sort of area to keep an eye on. And it has come back below that. And a lot of that was based upon, worries or fears about what's going on in the Middle East. There was some talk, too, from the Financial Times that Saudi Arabia will increase production. In December they have held off on production increases, and they're going to do that because they feel they're losing market share. And that sort of you can understand where they're worried about that, as Russia has no problem sort of trying to get that's where they're funding all of the war efforts is with their oil money, or a big part of it. So they're definitely going to be all over that. And we've also seen in the U.S. where our reliance on foreign oil has dropped. So, and we're now an exporter of oil instead of an importer. So oil down below that 70 handle, Brent a little higher. But we could see that change here. We'll see if we see anything happen with the SPR, with the Strategic Petroleum Reserve here in the U.S. Do they take this advantage? If it does broach back down to that 66, 65 handle, do they look to buy back in there? I mentioned we've been buoyed by China. I also think that we're getting some decent news, or at least things looking a little rosier in Europe also. I did see that HSBC and now Deutsche Bank have both come out and said that they do expect to see a more rapid easing cycle from the ECB. So that, again, another positive economic, data point, so to speak, that has it, us moving in the correct direction here so far this morning. So, again, really nice to see that. I do want to go over some of the numbers that came through this morning. So we had jobless numbers come through. They sunk to a 4-month low. A number of Americans who applied for unemployment benefits last week fell to nearly a 4-month low of 218,000, which reflects a reluctance of businesses to cut jobs, even though they're not hiring as many new workers. So we've spoken about this, here in pretty good detail. That part, labor is definitely the number one thing that most people are looking at on economic data right now. As inflation is sort of getting back in check, labor seems to be where the Fed is focused. And what do we see? We see a remarkably low level of layoffs, which seem to be part of the saving grace so far for the economy, keeping us buoyed, not putting us into a recession. So something we want to keep an eye on. We know that hiring has slowed sharply. It's gotten harder for people to find jobs, but as long as most people are working and spending, economy should be okay, economists say. New claims declined by 4,000 in the 7-day period. So, economists polled by the Wall Street Journal had forecast claims to be 223,000. So, the number of new claims looked even better based on actual filings. We saw raw claims fell to 180,878. So they're moving below 200,000 for 7 straight weeks. And that's actually uncommon. We don't see that very often. And new jobless claims dropped in 34 of 53 states. So in territories, they include Puerto Rico. So that's good to see. Again, positive economic data definitely helps us. There, I do want to keep QQ up as we're watching here. Other economic data that came out today was durable good orders, and the orders for durable goods were basically flat in August. The Commerce Department said this morning. Result was much better than anticipated. Economists had actually forecast about a 3%, I believe it was, fall in orders, and for durable goods, which is products that are made to last at least 3 years, if you don't know. And durable good orders rose a revised 9.9% in July. So they raised that estimate. It had been at 9.8. Core capital goods orders, which exclude volatile sectors like transportation and defense, rose about 0.2% last month after dropping about that same amount in July. So we've rebalanced out there. Shipments of core goods, which are also factored into GDP, which we'll talk about in a second, rose by 0.1. So again, the main takeaway was a lot of these numbers were supposed to, expected or estimated to come in at negatives. They came in at basically flat. but flat better than negative, has the markets moving into the right direction here. And again, we see QQQ up 1.7% here before opening. SPY up about 0.85. If we look at it, we'll go through the others in a few seconds here. Let's get through the rest of this economic data. Well, not the last, but the next piece of economic data that we saw come across was that the U.S. economy grew 3% in the spring, and GDP looks set to repeat that here maybe in the third quarter. So the last of the three updates on the U.S. growth in the second quarter, or the GDP, showed the economy expanded a solid 3% annual pace, and there's no sign that it's taken a big turn for the worse. So again, steady ship, keeping us about where we expected, has the markets moving up. So gross domestic products, the official scorecard of the economy, was unchanged from the prior 3% estimate. What's more, the economy appears to be on track to expand at a similar clip in the soon-to-be-ended third quarter. The latest forecasts point to a growth rate of just under 3%. The increase in consumer spending, the main engine of the economy, was revised to 2.8% from 2.9%. And government spending, on the other hand, rose at 3.1 annual clip instead of 2.7. So do keep in mind that the government spending did push this number in the right direction a little bit. Those were the most notable changes to the estimates. So again, generally positive news across the economic data so far this morning. I don't think I've seen PCE come in yet. Let's see if we get those numbers coming across. Sorry, just trying to see. Thursday GDP. No, I'm not showing them yet. Durable goods. No, not yet. Not seeing that yet. 10 o'clock, we have pending home sales that we'll keep an eye on. Also, like we said, a lot of Fed speak to keep our eyes on in general. So after this news, we are seeing Treasury yields that are rising as the investors are weighing this fresh economic data on our U.S. economic growth and jobless claim. The yield on the 10-year note was trading about 1 basis point higher in morning trading, back up about 3.8, while the 2-year rose about 4 basis points to 3.6. So good to see those moving up or in the right direction there. Okay, Eurozone, we talked about China oil. Oh, the other thing we need to definitely focus on is chips. You know, Micron, in their quarterly earnings report last night, really seemed to move the market. And, you know, one of the stimuluses we saw move the market was Micron here. And it's moved all the chips up nicely. One of the reasons that QQQ outpacing SPY and everything else. And Micron, you know, it jumped after the memory chip maker posted better than expected quarterly earnings and issued guidance that topped Wall Street expectations. Right now, Micron is running up about 18% here in the pre-market hours. You know, Micron is one we've been talking about here on Quasar Markets, and we said watch out if it fills that gap up, you know, here between that 94.07 to that 97 area. It's done that. It's up to 113 now, so it is just skyrocketing up almost 20% in the last 2 days. Keep in mind, here at Quasar Markets, we brought a report to you earlier this week on Monday talking about Micron being poised or having the best analyst estimates for the next 12 months. So if you were watching here, you did see that already. Company, and one of the things I think that has all of the chips moving in an upward direction today is they said that robust artificial intelligence related demand helped sales of chips for their data centers, and their overall revenue nearly doubled from a year earlier. Micron expects the momentum to continue in the current year, saying both revenue and adjusted earnings are likely to beat analyst views. Revenues came in at $7.75 billion, beating the Wall Street estimates by about 1.3%, and profits rose to $887 million from a loss of $1.43 billion a year earlier. Their adjusted earnings of $1.18 a share topped analyst estimates by about 6%. Micron expects fiscal first quarter revenue between $8.5 billion and $8.9 billion, and about $1.66 to $1.82 of adjusted per share earnings, ahead of those analyst estimates. So again, seeing a nice move up there by Micron. It has taken a bunch of the chips with it. We can see that, AMD up about 3% here on that news. AVGO, Broadcom up about 1.87. Intel up about 3.27. Nvidia up about 2.51%. We'll mention this pushes Nvidia back into the world of a $3 trillion company. So it has made that move back up again. Like I said, you've seen a lot of green across the board here. Some of the ones, though, that are not moving in the right direction or that are having some problems this morning, we got to talk about CarMax. CarMax had their earnings report release, and they missed an EPS miss, but a revenue beat. The stock is down early Thursday after their fiscal second quarter sales topped estimates, but not enough to offset the pressure on its car loan business. So again, we've seen the bottom end of that banking business, causing issues. Ally, who does a lot of those type of things, they've been under pressure. So the company had a net income of about 132.8. Let me just pull up those numbers. Up about 132.8 million or 85 cents a share for the quarter of August 31st, up about from 118.6 million or 75 cents a share a year earlier. Sales, though, fell to 7.014 from the 7.074 that they saw last year, but were comfortably ahead of 6.831 consensus we saw on Fact Check here, as we can see. Retail used unit sales rose 5.1 and same-store used car sales rose 4.3, but their wholesale unit sales were down about 0.3, and used vehicle average selling prices were down about 4.6%. So inflation bringing that down a little bit. The company bought 300,000 vehicles from consumers and dealers, which was up almost 3% from a year ago. Their chief executive, Bill Nash, said in their prepared remarks that we grew retail used unit sales, delivered strong margins, and continued to manage S&G and A, and drove double-digit earnings growth while managing through an industry-wide auto loan loss pressure. So CarMax Auto Finance had an income of about $115.6 million, down 14.4% from a year ago, mostly due to an increase in the provision for loan losses. So again, worried about the economy on the lower end still. That's still a fear here. And it offset growth in the average managed receivables and the stable net interest margin. The company set aside about $112.6 million in loan loss provisions compared with 89.8 a year ago. And you can see the stock getting hit here. So there are a few losers like that to keep a mind on. Another one, Concentrix, is down here almost 14%. They had an EPS miss of about 1.14%. They did hit their revenue numbers, but in general, not a positive view there. part of that was that their non-GAAP earnings was 2.87 per diluted share, which was up from 2.76 a year earlier, but below what analysts had expected at about 2.93. And then sales for the quarter rose to 2.39 billion from 1.63 billion a year earlier, and it did just beat analysts' suggestions there. They did repurchase about 600,000 shares in quarter three, and they raised their quarterly dividend to about 33 cents from 30 cents. It will be payable November 5th, but they are getting hit as they see that news. Another one to keep an eye on that's moved down here in the pre-market is Jefferies. Late Wednesday, they reported higher fiscal third quarter results on a yearly basis amid gains across its investment banking and asset management divisions. So the financial services company earnings came in at 75 cents a share in the quarter that ended in August, jumping from 22 cents the year before. But again, that was below estimates of 78 cents sort of on the street. Net revenues advanced 42% to 1.68 million, but that was shy of the analyst estimates of about 1.71 billion. As a result, we're seeing them down about 5.3% here in the pre-market moving. Again, in notes that from their report, the top line reflects strong performance and continued momentum in investment banking, with particularly strong performance in advisory. Their CEO, Richard Handler, and their president, Brian Friedman, said in a statement, "We are pleased with the strength and direction of our profit margin and return metrics and are optimistic about the balance of this year and our outlook for 2025, according to the executives. Investment banking net revenue soared 47% year over year, driven by an increase in advisory activity that they attribute to market share gains and improving market conditions. Handler and Friedman also said that advisory revenue climbed to 592.5 million, representing their best quarter on record in that. So even with that, we are seeing them move up slightly here. Or excuse me, move down slightly here, about 5%. Another earnings report we had was Progress Software. They were up nicely yesterday on the news and continuing here today. Progress Software shares rose about 13% between the two after saying that their estimates and full year guidance are going to top earnings and full year guidance are going to top estimates. So again, good to see that. We're seeing some positive things out of the software companies here. So definitely a positive here. Yesterday we talked a little bit about Cintas, had their earnings reports. Now, as a result of that, we're starting to see a few of the analysts, Deutsche Bank and Baird, that have basically put them at neutral. They're looking about 209 on their estimates there. So we will keep an eye on that. Seeing a little selling here as we head into the open. We are about a 1 minute away from the open. Seeing a little bit of selling here. Tick still positive though, plus 166 as we head into open. And we are open, and boom, there goes tick up, 274, 202, 232. So come on, tick's moving in the right direction here. Keep us moving up. SPY getting hit, so we're seeing a little sell-off on the SPY. Seeing a little sell-off QQQ. Gold holding up. Silver moving up.
Bitcoin coming down a little bit. Okay. So we are seeing some of the chips are still trying to move. Let's see what Nvidia is doing here. Up 2.08. So initial sell-off here. This is a 1-minute chart as we kicked off our minutes. But overall, still holding up well. Of course, with that news about the Chinese influx to their system and their financial easing, we're seeing a big move up by the Chinese stocks here again. Alibaba now up another almost 8%. Baidu up almost 9% here this morning. JD up almost 14%. Temu PDD up about 11.6. Walmart, so seeing Walmart get hit here. Don't see much there. Getting a little bounce on Walmart. So was that going to be the bounce up? Tick has gone negative here. Tick has gone negative. Let's see what's going on here. Another one moving early this morning, Southwest Airlines moving this morning. And that is because Southwest raised its revenue outlook and indicated it would resume stock repurchases for the first time in more than 4 years. Keep in mind that they are holding their annual investor day today. They also plan to provide details on its transformation plan, which includes assigned and premium seating, red-eye flights, and about $500 million in costs. Their chief executive officer, Bob Jordan, was quoted this morning as saying, "We are now ushering in a new era at Southwest, moving swiftly and deliberately to transform the company by elevating the customer experience, improving financial performance, and driving sustainable shareholder value." The stock was up about 4.7. Now you can see it really taken off, up almost 10.8%. So people are liking what they say so far. You know, the reasons for the improved outlook included the reaccommodation of customers affected by other airlines' flight cancellations due to the CrowdStrike holdings. They were one of the airlines that got a benefit, like we talked about with JetBlue. Also, they weren't as reliant, I guess, on CrowdStrike and weren't hit as hard by those issues. Remember, the Southwest also said it plans to start selling assigned seats in the second half of 2025, with the first flights under the new seating model operating in the first half of 2026. Premium seating will also be offered along with premium offerings. We do know that has been a big part of the Elliott, in Elliott Management, who's come in as an activist, bought a lot of shares, wants to see these changes coming in. They're taking them, and it's moving it in the right direction. So it is great to see that. It just, any way you look at it, it's great to see. Just want to take a look here. QQQ, we're continuing to see a sell-off here. So looks like that great green start we were looking to have, we're trying to give it back. Now the question starts to be, how far down do we start to retrace? Can we get support from the MA you see here at about 490.66 if we continue to drop here? Or is this just a quick profit taking? And that wouldn't surprise me. You see a move up overnight on some of these. Seeing some stoppages already here. BTOC looks to be halted on the way up. See that move up. POCI, another one. That was halted right on the open. Do we get a bottom here, or are we still falling? Looks like it wants to follow that 290.71 I talked about. So far, seeing a sell-off across most things here. Tick there went back positive here, 174, 194. So starting to get a little bit of momentum into here. Let's see. Can it hold up? Bitcoin 64. 299, not as much of a mover here. You can see gold getting a little hit here this morning too. Silver and Bitcoin looking similar there. Oil has picked up since the open, so we are seeing that. Does look like we're trying to move back up in the right direction here. Tick back positive at about 385. So we are trying to move a little bit in the right direction there. Essentia up 7.41. They did just have their earnings. And as you can see, the shares are rising after the management consulting and tech company beat earning estimates and raised its dividend. Instead, its board approved an additional $4 billion in stock repurchases. So we are seeing a buyback and raising its dividend. So for the fiscal fourth quarter that ended August 31st, they reported adjusted earnings of $2.79 a share. It beat Wall Street's estimates by a penny. Their revenue of 16.41 edged just briefly above the consensus estimates of about 16.37, and their fourth quarter new bookings were 20.1 billion, and generative AI new bookings were 1 billion. Their CEO Julie Sweet said in a press release, "We continue to accelerate our leadership in generative AI, which we believe is the most transformative technology of the next decade, delivering 3 billion in new bookings for the year." So again, Accenture, one of the big consulting firms out there, talking AI, as we have been here at Quasar, of course. So definitely moving in the right direction on that news. Moving in the other direction is Chevron. Chevron down about 1.21. Again, not all that surprising, seeing a little bit of a broader sell-off in the sector, and we can take a look at that by looking at XLE, which is the Energy Select Sector Fund from Spider, excuse me, and it is down about 1.17% here. You can see it tried to make a move back up, but hasn't really done that. Tesla up about 1.12% here this morning and trying to move back up. It does look like we are trying to get a little bit of movement, but tick still negative. VIX, we're going to talk a little bit about the fear and greed and the VIX and what's going on there. So let's actually get into that. VIX currently trading at about 15.28, as we can see. And what I want to talk about is, this is the CBOE's volatility index, and it's receded to its lowest levels of the month early Thursday. And, some will say that it signals that investors' fears of a stock blow up have abated. But futures contracts that are tied to the index are telling a different story, and we definitely need to pay attention to that. The report that I'm reading from here is from the founder of Sevens Report Research, Tom Essay, And what he pointed out is that the October VIX contract is trading at a premium to the November contract, an unusual development known as backwardation. Typically the VIX future curve moves in an upward slope, and it's now moving in a downward slope. So we don't see that very much. And according to Asai, the inversion is notable not much for so much for its degree. The October contract is just 0.3 points above its September sibling as of early Thursday, but for its staying power, the segment of the curve has been in backwardation since October. Contract started trading in February, so we've seen this for a while. The October VIX futures contracts can be used to hedge risks around the November 5 election, according to CBOE Global Markets, the option that created that index. This is consistent with other measures showing traders are bracing for some volatility around the vote, perhaps even a bigger blowup than what investors experienced in earlier August and September. And he pointed out that the VIX itself is exhibiting a concerning pattern. Since skyrocketing to its highest level in 4 years in early August, the index has expressed a series of higher lows. While many have cautioned against using technical analysis on the VIX, SA nevertheless said that a trend like this hasn't been seen since late 2021 and early 2022. So, while we're not seeing volatility show up in the daily VIX as we see here, the futures are pointing to a little bit of a different direction here. Okay, U.S. market movers, now that we've hit our 10-minute mark, we're now 12 minutes, let's take a look and see what we're seeing. TBIO for Pumpers, Telesis Bio. You can see up about 96%. Made a huge jump up yesterday afternoon. Giving them up, though, that's not one that I think I would want to take a look at here. That doesn't look like it's very promising for anything KTTA. Let's take a look there. Okay, this one much more promising on the hourly chart. We can see on the short term not looking good. We need it to rebound here, but any kind of break above 715 here, and you could look for a run up to the 750 mark for sure. So this is one you might want to keep an eye on that might have us moving in the right direction. Seeing here, Bitcoin 64,292. Does look like QQQ's trying here, but I'll be honest, we're not seeing ticks negative again. Yeah, seeing some weakness there. We see small market cap stocks, small cap stocks moving down also. I was trying to see if that maybe was a little bit different. Not really. Not seeing a lot of positive movement, to be honest with you, since the open. Mostly negative here. Trying to look across some different sectors, see if we see something different. Apple getting hit here pretty hard. So again, we've seen the market definitely turning in the opposite direction here. So all of that sort of good news I talked about before opening, not really holding up here so much. Chips, AMD even, pulling back a little bit. We had seen 168.50 dropping down 167. I'm not scared here. I think we still end up with a plus day. I think it's just going to settle down here, and then it's got to grind its way back up. So these are the days that I like to see a little bit more, I don't like to see the sell-off start off our day. Gets people in a negative uh, look here, but it does look like we're going to try to grind up a little bit here. Keeping an eye on tick. It's back positive. You can see tick has gone positive here for the last 5 or 6 minutes. So we are starting to see that move back up. QQQ, you can see climbing slowly back up here. So I do think we hit the bottom and are now turning it around. Apple again now trying to get back up here. So we are seeing chips having a little harder time. AMD still. AVGO. So we're seeing a little bit of volatility, not surprising, not unexpected here. JD moving back up here again. So that'd be interesting. Now let's see what that KTTA is doing since things are moving back up. Okay. Let's get back into it. Again, one we're going to keep an eye on today is Costco, C-O-S-T. Oh, there it is. What am I doing? Costco right now down about a half a point. We will see. There are expecting their results today, and we know that Costco has been on a roll here. You can see it is up 6.21 over the last 3 months, 23% over the last 6 months, and 65% in the last 12 months. It's really been on a roll. Analysts are expecting to see a solid quarter from Costco when the retailer reports after the market closes today. And you can see they're estimating they're looking for about $79.9 billion in sales, which would be revenue rising about 1% versus same store last year, same time last year. They also expect to see same store sales up about 5.6% and earnings per share at about 5.08 compared to a year ago 4.86. So it is one that we will definitely be keeping a close eye on. Definitely being hit so far today. That becomes tough when expectations are for things to really go just almost swimmingly well. That's when we tend to see even if Costco hits those numbers, sometimes we see things move in the wrong direction. So be one to keep an eye on for sure. We know Costco is always in the heart and wallets of many consumers. It definitely offers a lot of bang for the buck, and consumers that are Costco shoppers tend to be very loyal shoppers, and of course the $1.50 hot dog is the talk of the world, right? So that's what we'll be watching today. We'll be taking a look at what happens with Costco. Did see some news where Boeing, and I warned of this as Boeing went on strike. Steve was a little bit more positive that they would have a quicker resolution. I really see this as being a bigger problem. I think that the unions in general, after last year's big wins against, the airlines and then UPS and such, that they feel they're in a place of power. They seem to be in a place of power, and I think that they are going to hold out for what they want. But what we've seen from this now is that SPR, which is Spirit, not Spirit Airlines, but Spirit Aerosystems, who makes some of the fuel components for the fuselage of the Boeing 737 MAX, saying that they would begin to furlough employees based upon the fact that the machinist strike against Boeing is causing the Boeing not to order any of their parts. And keep in mind that Boeing accounted for about 70% of Spirit's commercial airplane revenue in 2023. So with the 737 MAX production being shut down, there's not really that much of a reason for them to keep producing parts that they won't get paid for. So, we'll see. Boeing has also agreed to buy the company for about $8 billion and bring it back into Boeing, because it had been spun off from there. But we'll see what happens. But that is definitely one, to keep an eye on. Investors also might hear about limited furloughs at other suppliers, but the numbers should be small because most aero suppliers also make parts for Airbus. So while Boeing's part of the business hurts them not as much as you see here with SPR, which is like we said, gets about 70% of their revenue from Boeing directly. Tick back to negative here. Question here is going to be, of course, you can see on a shorter time frame here, which is the minute chart here down the bottom, and I'll blow it up here for a second. We sort of found a bottom here around 573, 30, 35. So if we can stay above and use that and break through the wedge here, we could see a nice move up. So it's trying on the minute chart to break back through that wedge. What I'd be looking at also here is, as it approaches the VWAP, what does it do? And VWAP right now sitting at 573.96. So that would be what I'd be looking at here. Would be 573.96 VWAP. So that would be the area that I'd be watching here to see as it approaches, can it break through or does it pull back? It's having trouble even with this trend line right now. So we're not really been able to break out of that trend line. That keeps us sort of negative on SPY so far. Like I said, though, this is a good setup. If you do get the bounce and it goes up, you do see a nice move up. A breakdown, though, tends to give you a pretty, you've got downside to that 570 level. Similar situation on Q here. Here you can see that trend line right here that you're going to want to break. And anything dropping below about here, you're sort of worried. So, 49.10, important spot below right now. Anything below 491 gives you a lot more downside here to keep an eye on. Tick still negative. Only 38. There it goes back to positive. Come on. No, won't go positive. SPY trying here, as we said. QQQ trying. So let's see if they can break out of these. Those are the two that matter the most right now. Again, rejected right at that trend line. Here we go. Come on, break through that trend line and we can see ourselves move in the right direction here. So that's what we are looking at here this morning. Taking a look here before we go. Video moving back up here. So Nvidia looking strong on the, short-term 1-minute chart here, trying to make a recovery. In general, not real pretty so far. I'm trying to move back. Tick still negative though. SPY is up 0.6%. I mean, it's not bad. QQQ is up 1.13%. I don't want to sound negative, but have we hit sort of where we're going to now trade sideways for most of the day? Do we find a solid floor here and start to move back up? Or will we see a break in the armor here today? Those are the questions you have to ask yourself as a trader. I do want to keep in mind again that we do know that when we've seen these sort of days where the muted start till about 10 o'clock, we've seen an up day most of the afternoons from there. So again, hopefully that was just a little bit of profit taking. Can't expect not to take profit when you were up almost 1.5% on NASDAQ at the open and up close to 3/4 to a point on the SPY. It's tough not to take that profit, and then when the option plays, especially in there, definitely something that you keep an eye on. I will say MU is about the one that I'm watching the most today. I want to see, this is the one that should have the most momentum today after earnings as it continue to move up. Looks real good so far. Will it complete the W formation here? To do that, it would need to get up towards this 130 mark here. But it looks like it wants to. And again, Micron has a lot of good, things on it. Seeing DSY, another pumper here moving up. Just got stopped. DSY. Could be a pumper here. Okay, well, that is going to do it for me here this morning. Again, we have a great lineup for you today. At 11:30, we'll have Jeremy Vreeland of Bullish Bulls and Matthew Tuttle of Tuttle Capital in to do their watch list. A lot of T&A there, technical analysis they'll bring to you. And then at 1 p.m., we have Scott Bauer from the floor of the CBOE in Chicago. He'll be here doing his Market Minds segment live stream. Please come in and join us. Again, I'm your host, Howard Greenberg. So happy to spend morning